Hey everyone, welcome to the 406th episode of the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and your co-host,
Kevin Toffel.
And we have a wonderfully fun show for you today. We're going to be talking about Apple's new HomePod, a survey about smart appliances that feels a little overdone, but we'll talk about what it's saying. We've got a new company from one of the co-creators of the Nest thermostat that's all about food waste. We've got two acquisitions to talk about, one that's closed and one that's a hostile takeover. Woo! Google Chromecast has a new remote out. We'll talk about why we're excited about that. Wise has a new security camera, keeping it real. And we've got a rumor about Google and its AirTag competitor. And Kevin's wife, bought a smart kettle. So we're going to talk about what she and Kevin think of that. We're also going to hear from Ivo Rook, who is the CEO of Once. And we're going to be talking about its new operating system that isn't an operating system and all about how to even out business models and do some cool things in the IoT. But first, a message from our sponsor. This week's sponsor is Silicon Labs. Yay, Silicon Labs. Silicon Labs is a leader in secure, intelligent wireless technology for a more connected world. They have an integrated hardware and software platform. They have intuitive development tools and robust support, which makes them an ideal long-term partner in building advanced industrial, commercial, home, and life applications. Silicon Labs makes it easy for developers to solve complex wireless challenges throughout their product lifecycle and get to market quickly with innovative solutions that transform industries, grow economies, and improve lives. You can learn more at scilabs.com. Okay, exciting. Apple has a new HomePod and it's doing a lot more.
It is. And for those who remember the original HomePod, it debuted in January 2018, and that was $349.
It was expensive.
It was. It's still big. I still think it's a little too expensive at $299, the newest one, because the old one, eventually it came down in price, but they discontinued it for people who don't remember. And that was back in, almost 2 years ago, March 2021.
And this is actually a really decent question to ask. But if you're competing with Google and, they've got 99 and Amazon, they've got $99 decent speakers. Amazon does have their Echo. What was that? The big fat subwoofer Echo.
Oh, I don't recall the name of it, but you're right. Yes.
The fancy one. And that was I think that was $200. And I think the Nest Audios, which were the fancier Nest audio speakers, no, those were $99. By the way, y'all, my Nest Audios that I purchased, they just keep falling offline now, and I'm getting error after error on them. I've unplugged them and replugged them in.
I wonder if anybody else is seeing the same. I don't have that product. I have Nest hubs, like the smart displays.
Yeah, it looks like I went into the, Google's support is so exciting. I went into the support module or the support forum for it, and apparently a lot of people have this issue, and then they'll do an update and it might go away. But it's like every time we ask Google to do something, even if it's a different Google device, because it's all on the same network, I guess, I get those guys, they're like, I'm sorry, I can't help with that. Or, yeah. So it's a little weird, but maybe there'll be an update one day that will fix it.
Maybe.
In the meantime, we unplugged them because it was really irritating that every time we asked Google something, it would randomly also say that those two couldn't do anything.
I would say you're fired to that speaker.
I'm really looking for a Sonos, but maybe I'll try these. So sorry about the digression, but what about that Apple product?
That's it. You didn't stop Apple from doing anything, because this week they introduced a new HomePod that looks an awful lot like the original HomePod, and that's fine. I like the look of it. It is $299, so it is a little bit cheaper. I still, again, think that's too much, but that's just me, and I'm a HomeKit user, so be that as it may, that's the price. You can start ordering it online as of now, and availability is Friday, February the 3rd. So what's different besides a 50% price cut? A lot of things we don't care about. I want to say we don't care about. I mean, it's more eco-friendly, more recycled products, etc. We certainly care about that. But from an IoT perspective, I noticed that it has a thread radio in it. So that is good.
Matter.
So yep. It will be a thread border router. It's always plugged in. It can be that main thread hub. It also has some things that you may pay for on other smart speakers, such as what they call sound recognition. That is a feature that can, wait for it, listen for smoke and carbon monoxide alarms, which will then send a notification to your iPhone. That is handy. And again, no subscription for that. So again, some do charge for that.
Some charge. They don't charge for the smoke detector and carbon monoxide. They usually charge for other parts. So like Amazon has their Guard that listens for some things, and then you pay more for like babies crying and window breaks.
Right. Dogs barking. Yes. Additionally, there is the UWB chip is still inside, so you can do a handoff with music from an iPhone just by approaching the HomePod. Yeah, okay. No new functionality there mentioned. However, there's also a new built-in temperature and humidity sensor. So you've got another bit of sensors for climate to set up automations and so on in HomeKit or eventually a Matter universe, I suspect.
Yes, because if this is Matter approved or Matter certified, then those sensors should be exposed for other devices.
Should be. It's a great sounding speaker, and I'm sure there's some minor improvements, and it's got spatial audio and all that. And yes, that's important, but not exactly something that we talk about here. So I don't know. Maybe we'll get one in-house and I give it a try and come back to people and say, here's what it does.
So let me ask you, because I think this is just such strange phrasing. In the Apple release, they have a section called Matter Support. And they're like, Matter launched last fall. Apple is a member of the Connectivity Standards Alliance, which maintains the Matter standard along with other industry leaders. And then they say HomePod connects to and controls Matter-enabled accessories and serves as an essential home hub, giving users access when away from home.
Yes.
It doesn't say that it's Matter certified.
I don't know that they would ever say that.
Okay.
Because it's Apple being Apple, they do things different. But the fact that it says HomePod connects to and controls Matter-enabled accessories, I presume it is technically Matter certified.
Okay.
And then the essential home hub aspect and access away from home is the HomeKit hub bits where you can remotely access your devices.
All right. We'll probably get you one of these just so you can play, because why not?
Goody.
All right. That's that. How long do you expect that HomePod to last?
I would like to think something at that price would be at least 5 years of support and such.
Okay. The reason I ask is because an organization in the UK called Which, and we've talked about them in the past, they're a consumer activism organization around technology. They did a survey and they realized that smart appliances that people might buy, they don't actually promise support on their software side, security updates, that sort of thing, to match the expected longevity of the device. And I did the incredibly long-winded version of this because the short version that Which is pushing is smart appliances could stop working properly after just 2 years because manufacturers are failing to provide tech updates, which feels a bit extreme, but this is a real problem. It's a real issue. I wouldn't worry so much about the 2-year time frame, but the lack of a published support date from vendors and sellers of smart devices, especially long-lived appliances, is a concern. So I'm glad they did this research. They called a total of 119 brands about their products and asked how long they would support these connected products with product updates. So they asked 119 companies. Only about 49% replied and gave the length of their support periods. Those who did reply basically said, so LG said their dishwashers, washing machines, and smart TVs could lose support just 2 years after launch, which would be disappointing since your lifespan of those things is pretty long. V's might get 5 years of support for critical security vulnerabilities. Samsung supports their smart TVs for at least 3 years and will fully comply with the new law. There's a new law in the UK on product security and telecommunications infrastructure. And Hisense offers smart dishwashers and washing machines and TV Assistant, respectively, for 10 years. So the UK law, basically, it's a cybersecurity law, and it says, hey, if you are putting out a smart device, you need to put a lifespan, like for those updates, at purchase, or you need to support it for 3 or 5 years. So this is something we've been asking for forever because it does suck when you buy a device and you're like, you don't know how long. I mean, most consumers do not research how long something's been in the market, right? Maybe they do for a big purchase, but sometimes not even then. So if something launched in 2019 and you're buying it this year, it could be out of update cycles basically next year. And that's obviously really sucky if you've just spent a lot of money on it.
I don't even know if consumers can easily find the information on how long it's being supported, right? As it is, barely half of the companies that were surveyed responded to begin with. And I'm assuming very few of those, even those that did respond, actually have that on a website that's easily readable, to find. Like, I don't know.
That's true.
For example, you have a smart stove that I don't think you have connected to the internet yet.
No, I do. I have a smart washing machine that I didn't connect to the internet, but I do have a smart stove that is connected to the internet.
And I'm guessing you don't know how long they're going to get updates, and I bet you can't find out easily.
Actually, it's GE Hire. And I think I did ask, believe it or not, because this is such a issue for me. Now, I don't remember what it is today. Mm-hmm. But I believe I did ask.
Most people probably would not. They would just assume. And what's interesting is, according to which, you're paying almost 300 pounds in this particular survey being UK based, more than the non-connected versions of these same products. So, what are you getting for your $300 besides connectivity? You should get that information for how long it's going to be supported.
Right. You really should. And I know that many producers, like I've talked to people at GE Appliances, I've talked to people at Samsung Appliances, and there's a Whirlpool, and they're all aware of the disconnect between update policies and the lifespan of these devices. Mm-hmm. I will say many of them feel like these devices are probably turning into like 10-year devices as they add smarts to them, which is something to think about. The Home Connectivity Alliance, which is, we've talked about it before on the show. This is an alliance with major appliance vendors, water heaters, air conditioning, thermostats, all of that. They're looking at building these sorts of things into the cloud to try to match functionality across the board over the long life of these appliances. How they're going to do that, still up in the air, but we'll see. So it's definitely known in the industry that this is an issue. I don't think they have a great solution yet. And that's why I think many of them may not respond or know yet, but yeah.
Also we're asking them to commit based on unknown costs, unknown support efforts, length of the life cycle of the devices. I get it. I'm not excusing them by any means, but I can see the challenge.
Yeah. So that's that. Let's talk about another smart appliance that is coming out into the world. Oh my god.
Food scraps. Let's talk about food scraps.
Yeah. Okay. Matt Rogers, who was one of I don't know if he was a co-founder with Tony Fadell of Nest, but he definitely worked closely with them at Nest and at Google Nest. So I talked to Matt a lot back in the day. But he has a new company, and he is the founder and CEO of a company called Mill. And what this is, it's a subscription service that comes with a Wi-Fi connected, it's a food composting bin, except it looks like a trash can, but you don't put real trash into it. You put food scraps into it. And then what it does is when you're done, you remember trash compactors from like the 80s? Mm-hmm. This sucks the moisture out and turns your food compost into these like pellets, dried up, non-smelly things. And then what happens is the bin fills up over time. And then when it gets full, on the app, it will send you a box and you pack all the food waste from it that doesn't smell and is powdery, and you pack it in the box, you ship the box off, and they feed it to chickens or something. We're going to have Matt come on the show next week. It's $33 a month for this ability to, compost your food in your home in a well-designed way, basically. They really emphasize that it doesn't stink. And in my house, we do compost. We actually have a little compost bin. We rush it out to our big compost bin, and the city takes it away. We paid $10 to $12 a month for the city's composting program. I don't know if that's subsidized. So The stink issue isn't a big deal for us because we live in Seattle and it's super cool most of the time. In the summer, that big old bin outside can get a little active with nature and fruit flies. But we also are able to stick like yard waste and stuff into it. So it's not like we would ever be able to get rid of that. So I don't know if we're the target market because I don't think I'd pay $33 a month for a separate composting trash can when I already have one that takes even more stuff.
I don't think I would fit in the target audience either. We live out in the sticks and we don't currently compost at the townhouse that we are at, but we did at the home we used to live at. And we would just reuse refuse in our soil. And there was obviously no monthly fee.
Yeah, but you had to manage a compost pile. And a lot of people probably don't have the space or interest into it.
That's true. Yeah, we had a big barrel outside that was on a swivel, and you would flip it upside down every couple of days or something just to keep the stuff moving and whatnot. And so, yeah, I agree. Maybe in cities or businesses where it's harder to do this kind of thing, I don't see a huge consumer market for this, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I really think this feels like something that would be good in like campus kitchens and things like that. I think some people, I think there's probably a small dedicated core group of consumers that would pay for this, but I don't know how large it is. And I also have, and we'll answer some of these questions about with the shipping, is this really environmentally better for people? I don't know. And then finally, I will say there's some cool things about this, which I like that it's going straight with the subscription model and it's a full package. I think that's a smart way to do this, and the hardware comes with that subscription. I like that they're thinking about food waste. So a lot of questions here, but
I think it's a good solution for a certain audience. I think that's not a massively large audience, even though we might.
Here's what I'm thinking. Let's imagine you're in an apartment building. And I think it could be really interesting for something like that, where you stick your food waste. I mean, you'd probably have to bring it to one of these on each floor or something. I'm just coming up with something here. You throw it in because that's also going to create that'll have more food.
Have a bigger impact.
Yeah. And when I think about the food compost that we do, probably only 10 to 15% of our overall compost bin is food scraps. The rest is, again, yard waste and, paper products, which are not, I don't think are put in here because that doesn't become chicken feed.
Right.
Anyway.
In the renter segment, sure, I see where it could work, but I don't think renters would want to be paying the fee. And obviously they wouldn't pay the whole $33 if it's spread out amongst a lot of people. But then you have people who don't want to pay and don't want to use it. Then you have people who will use it and not pay. I mean,
I think in imagine you're in one of those high-end apartment buildings, and this is just a service the apartment offers, basically.
Right.
And maybe, yeah. Anyway, so we'll learn more later.
Good.
Let's talk about deals. Semtech has closed their $1.2 billion acquisition of Sierra Wireless. That means we're going to have both Semtech's LoRa and LoRaWAN radios with Sierra Wireless's cellular radios. And Sierra Wireless has made cellular modems forever. They focused on the IoT a few years ago. And so the combination here is excellent. Yay.
They used to make practically every portable hotspot when I was using 3G and CDMA hotspots.
Yes, I was going to say they're the hotspot people. And yeah, so this deal was announced a while back, but it's closed now. They're saying the two firms are going to generate $40 million in operational synergies within the next year and a half. I don't know about that, but sure. I think this is a good deal. I think you have to have the capability to integrate both. I think going forward, the ability to have cellular plus unlicensed on a module is going to be important for certain devices. And so, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you can offer a compelling product to customers and say, look, you can use unlicensed spectrum in certain places and not have a cellular bill, but you have fallback to paid cellular networks.
Yeah.
Hey, right. Now you can predict costs a little bit more from a data standpoint because your worst case is going to be whatever your monthly plan is. If it's per packets or per kilobytes, whatever it is, but it might be less because you can rely on LoRa.
Yeah, I would imagine you would rely on LoRa as much as possible. And
absolutely.
Pop that up as needed or as fallback. So in other IoT deals, Emerson has started a hostile takeover, a $7 billion hostile takeover of National Instruments. And you might be like, what? Who? Emerson. I've covered them for a while in the IoT space. They do oil refining. They do process manufacturing. They actually have the coolant and air conditioning business, I believe, still. And they are trying to buy a company called National Instruments. I'm super familiar with it because I lived in Austin. NI is an Austin business. They make test and measurement equipment. And if you're like, bleh, every lab in the world, every electronics engineer has a bunch of NI equipment, which is really good, but also really expensive. And NI has also been behind a lot of really good standards and working hard with things like time-sensitive networking. They are working on building devices for like terahertz spectrum sniffing. And all of this is because for every new advance that we have in technology, they're building the stuff to measure and test for it. So they're actually very, you know how I always say everything starts with the silicon? These guys, it starts with them too, because you use their stuff to test the silicon when they're put on modules. So Emerson wants this. It makes sense. And I does not want it, but they have said that they are going to sell the business. Emerson has been trying to buy National Instruments for the last 8 months. So yeah, that's what's happening there.
$7 billion offer.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about fun things. Google's next 4K Chromecast remote is going to have a solar powered remote.
Yay.
And it won't have batteries. And I think this is great because Google, it sounds like they're working with a company called Osung Electronics, who is working with a company called Exeger. Exeger makes the PV, the solar panel, and it attaches onto various, they have a deal with Nordic Semiconductor, but you put this PV on here for energy harvesting, and then you put a different microcontroller and such underneath that's designed to work with it, like to sip energy, basically, and power something. At first, I thought it might be Atmosic, which is also working with companies to build remotes that don't require batteries and is doing energy harvesting for that purpose, but it doesn't sound like they are. But it's really cool because we need to get rid of batteries and everything. And the next step, I know this is a TV remote, but as this becomes more common there, we're going to see prices go down, economies of scale pick up, and then we're going to see it adopted in the IoT. Yay.
And this reminds me that just 2 weeks ago at the Consumer Electronics Show, we spent a fair bit of time with the folks at Dracula. And they print basically photovoltaic films to capture and harvest energy. Obviously, this product is not using their technology. Okay, that's fine. But what I want to get at is we saw all the different ways that you could cut out and print these photo cells.
PVs. You can just call them PVs.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I struggle with that word. And I'm like, okay, but what would I use them on? And actually, a remote I think is ideal because it 99.9% of the time of its life, it's just sitting there doing nothing. It's only when you pick it up, press a button, that it sends either an IR or some other RF signal to your TV or whatever it's controlling, and it uses juice. So why not, when it's sitting there, let it recharge? I love this. It's a perfect product for this type of technology. I'd like to see more of this in IoT things. I mean, we've seen it with video doorbells, but they're big, clunky things because they need more power.
I mean, you could stick it on maybe a motion sensor, because if it's to turn on a light, it's going to be in the dark most of the time. You're right. Hold on. We'll come up with temperature sensors.
Temperature. For perfect example, the Eve weather sensor. It uses a small coin cell battery, and it's supposed to last for like 1 to 2 years. That doesn't use up a lot of power, clearly, because it's just got a couple sensors to gather data and send that data, right? Nothing else. No, it's not sending video. It's not using any high battery powered application. That would be perfect for something like this.
Yeah, you're right.
Unless you live in Seattle.
No, but there's still enough light. There's lights on. It doesn't need like the brightest sunlight.
Even on cloudy days, we generated power with our solar panels on the roof. I mean, absolutely.
So, okay. Other news. Wyze.
Been a while.
Yeah, someone sent me a tweet. They're like, why is it still scrappy? And that's because they have launched, the Wisecam OG. It's $20. And then they have a Wisecam OG telephoto 3X, which I guess gives you 3X zoom for $30. I will say, when Wise launched their camera, 2017, I think it was, at $20, it was amazing. Like everyone was like, holy cow, what is this thing? Because we were stuck in this market with, Google Nest Cam and, even, I don't know if
those where you could easily spend like $200 on like the drop cam, which eventually got bought, and the Nest Cams and other cameras. Absolutely.
Yeah. So the cool things, and so when it came out, it was really like people loved it, and it changed the game because then you could buy a camera and stick it in all kinds of weird places. Like I had one to monitor my fish tank, and I got to see my snail trip, which was one of my favorite moments because I had a camera on it all the time when the snail started moving and then it tripped. I caught it on the Wise. So
okay,
you're like, wow, Stacy, so much.
Okay.
I no longer have that snail. The 1999 Wisecam OG also has a motion activated 40 lumen spotlight to help with image quality, which is nice. It'll also people will be like, oh no, the light has gone on. And so hopefully they won't steal your packages. Yeah.
What I would say, because I know we talk about Wise a lot, and I would never say they're the best camera out there, right? Mm-hmm. Because right off the bat, you only get 20 FPS video in daylight, 15 FPS at night.
That's frames per second. Most cameras get you like 60. So
yeah, it does have HD quality, yes. But what they're doing is very smart. They are coming out with new cameras that have these cool new features, and then those features and sensors and such trickle down into newer products at a lower price. And what I mean by that is both of these have the Starlight sensor for night vision, which is really quite good. They also have 90 decibel user activated alarms. They also have the two-way talk. So whatever you want to talk to somebody. They also, and this is interesting because Wise sort of got away from this for a little while, they also support micro SD cards for local storage. And that way you can have 24/7 recording. I presume at no subscription fee because it's local.
Yeah, I guess. Wise does have a subscription, the Cam Plus subscription. But yeah, I don't know if there's a subscription fee associated with this. I bet not.
So when you think about, okay, you're not getting maybe the latest and greatest camera quality or whatever, but you're getting all that for $20 or $30. My issue is more with the connectivity of those devices because my Wise cameras take forever to show up on a Google Smart Display.
Oh, my issue is that Wise had an open security issue for quite some time on their original cameras, those OG cameras, and they didn't deal with it, and they only told people about it later, and then they killed the camera. So we've got issues. That was a little underhanded. So if you're up for a cheap camera that's not maybe in a sensitive spot, so if it's looking outdoors and you don't really care about privacy or things like that, then, go ahead. All right, Google. Let's talk about gossip, speculation.
This is very believable gossip and speculation because Apple's AirTags, I'd say, upended the whole Bluetooth tracking tag industry because they did Bluetooth combined with the massive Find My network, combined with a UWB chip so you could precisely find something exactly where it is if it's above you or below you. Google has no such thing, but apparently they are working on one. I'm just going to mention the code name because this is important as The Mandalorian Season 3 comes out. The code name is Grogu. Yay.
Is that the name of the baby Yoda or is that the species?
First of all, he is not a baby Yoda.
Oh my God.
Yoda did not have babies that we know of.
Okay. I can't believe I'm having this conversation.
Anyway, that is the name of the child.
Oh, that's the child's name, not Baby Yoda.
That's what it's called in the series, the child.
Okay. So it's called Grogu. It's going to use UWB as well?
It is. Not the Force, UWB.
Got it. Okay. And is there any time frame?
No. It's hard to say because this is all leaks and poking around in FCC databases and such. So no idea. I would imagine, I don't think this is that challenging to create of a product. I would imagine this year.
Yeah. And they usually have an event they have I.O. I.O.'s in May or June usually.
Usually in May, if I recall correctly. And they have had some device launches at I.O.
Okay, so I'm going to hope for I/O because I want that kind of capability, darn it, in my Pixel ecosystem.
I do not in my iOS ecosystem, but you go for it.
Okay, yeah, because
I want it for you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Sure.
Thank you. All right, so we'll wait on that. And we haven't seen a lot of use cases beyond Find My, but there are really cool use cases for this once we have it scattered in everybody's homes. Ideally, we would not have to have two separate standards for the UWB radio, but this is going to be key for providing really granular context in the smart home. So I expect that to be used as these things percolate throughout this ecosystem.
Percolate. Very good segue.
Isn't it?
That was so good. And I get to do something I never get to do, but I love to do. I get to talk about my wife.
Yay!
Yay.
And percolating.
And percolating. Yes. Two topics I never get to talk about. My wife is percolating. My wife, actually, she doesn't percolate. She has never had a drop of coffee pass her lovely lips in her life.
Wow. But yet she still purchased what I think of as a pour over coffee heater.
And so does she, because she bought herself with basically not my input, a Govee smart gooseneck kettle. It's an electric kettle. And she told me she was going to buy it. And I was like, I was so shocked because she's not into the smart home, although she appreciates it. She just doesn't get as excited about it as we do. I just nodded my head. I'm like, okay. I shrugged my shoulders. I'm like, go ahead. You want a kettle? Because she has wanted a regular kettle for a while, but she saw this and she bought it. It is normally $79.99 direct from Govee. That's the retail price. She found it on Amazon for $64. It's on Govee's site right now for $64. So I don't think that's a bad price for a smart kettle, provided it works, of course.
I spent $100 on my dumb kettle because I was stuck between a rock and a hard place when my last kettle broke. So yes.
Yeah. I told you need to take that back. Maybe you want this one. I don't know.
It only has 0.8 liters. I like the 1.7.
Yes.
That's okay.
Okay. I don't use hot water at all for anything. So I have a Keurig for coffee. I could use this as a pour over coffee maker, and that really fits in with my minimalist, simple lifestyle, but I'm not giving up my Keurig. It's one of the things I refuse to do. So in any case, she bought it and she plugged it in and she started using the buttons on it to heat up her water, and it worked fine. And I'm like, it's smart. And she's like, yeah. So I'm like, let's make it smarter and let's actually use those features. And I walked away and she ended up setting the device up. She got the Govee app on her phone. She went through the process of onboarding the device to our Wi-Fi network. Now this has a 2.4 gigahertz wireless radio and Bluetooth as well. So I immediately thought, it's not going to work for her because it's 2.4 and most mesh networks really don't handle those well. But it worked just fine. So kudos to Govee on that and my wife for figuring it out. So got hooked up just fine. Now with the app, she can basically, instead of touching the hard buttons on the device itself, she can be upstairs and press virtual buttons in the app for different temperatures, or it's got presets basically for temperatures, for the proper temps for green tea, oolong, coffee, and boiling. You can set it to any temperature you like and so on. Then I said, you want to really make it smart? Let me hook it up to Google because it works with Google and Madam A. And we have some Google things in the house. So we did that. I got flustered at first because the works with Google setup works just like it does with any other device. You link the account in the Google Home app and it worked fine. And I saw some suggestions to ask the coffee or the kettle through Google. So I said, hey, G, what's the temperature of the water in the kettle? She had just made some and it told me exactly what it was, which was great. But then when I asked it to turn on the kettle, it didn't do it. It basically is like, no, you have to set that up in Google Assistant. And for 15 minutes, I futzed around and tried all these different combinations of words, except for the magic word. And I found out by looking at the Google Smart Display that when I look at the controls, the virtual controls for this, it says power. So I'm like, on a whim, let me just say power on the kettle. And it worked. So you can turn the kettle on and off by voice with Google that way. So that's good. So now she's happy. We're putting a Google Nest audio small speaker in her office. So she can just say, yes, Stacy's got a look on her face like, oh my God. Yes, this is huge. This is huge. So she can now, just instead of going downstairs, hitting buttons or pulling out her phone, she can just tell Google to heat up her water. Other things in the app, you can schedule the kettle, but it's like a one-time thing. So that's silly to me. I don't really get that.
But you can also put it in a routine.
I wasn't sure about that. Yeah, I wasn't sure about that because the scheduling bit, you set it up, but you can't have it recurring, right? So I'm like, this is just dumb. But then I thought it's hooked into Google Home. So let me go to like the basic good morning routine for Google Home and add that as an action. And I typed in power on the kettle as my command. And then I tested it. And sure enough, I got my news, I got my calendar. And at the same time, I heard the water getting heated up. As far as the heat, I know this is very important for certain people that make certain teas or pour over coffees. I tested the temperatures on this thing using another device, the Meter Bluetooth thermometer that we put on our gift guide, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And sure enough, it was within a degree. The Govee app, as well as Google, show like a meter of the water, as well as the actual temperature with the numbers. And the meter app with the thermometer was only off by 1 degree the entire time everywhere I tested. So it seems pretty good.
Wow. Okay. And how much is it?
It's $79.99 unless you get it on sale, which we did. I have a feeling it's eternally on sale. So $64 for us.
Got it.
So
okay.
Take back your Cuisinart and get 2 of these because then you'll have the capacity.
I don't know how often we use 1.7 of hot water all at once. And with the smarts, I guess you still have to refill it. But yeah.
You do. And I'm so glad you brought that up because I was just about to say, if I had to pick out a gotcha, it will actually heat up without water in it. And I don't like that. So you have to use it and then I would refill it so that way it's always ready for you. But I can't imagine heating up a big hunk of metal with no water in it is a good thing.
It's not. My mom has definitely done things like that. Very bad. Okay. It actually ties in really this issue of going through Google versus scheduling and putting in your routine ties into our question this week. So let's move now to the Internet of Things podcast hotline, the segment of the show where we answer your questions. And the IoT podcast hotline is sponsored by Silicon Labs Wi-Fi portfolio in particular. And it is designed specifically for the IoT where multi-protocol RF performance, ultra-low power consumption, and fast time to market are critical. You can learn more about Silicon Labs low-power Wi-Fi hardware, software, tools, and dev kits at scilabs.com. And if you would like to call us, you will be entered to win a cute little NanoLeaf starter bundle of the mini triangles. And you can call us at 512-623-7424. And this week's question is from Max, who has a question about his Hue lights and motion control. Let's hear it.
Hi, my name is Max. This is the first time listening to your podcast, and you offered to answer questions, so I figured I'd give it a shot. So I've been having trouble with my Hue ecosystem or whatever, and I have a light that is attached to a motion sensor that seems to get hung up every once in a while. Like it either comes on and stays on whenever it's supposed to go off in like a minute, or it's like the motion sense isn't being registered. But I'm using Alexa to control my home stuff, so I can control the routine. It's actually controlled by routine, sorry. I can activate the routine through the app fine, and it works properly then. But it seems like sometimes it isn't working, and it's always whenever I'm doing like changes to my network, either rebooting the system or unplugging something Ethernet-wise from the router. So yeah, I was just curious if you might have an idea.
Okay, Max. It's a little unclear here in your message, but it sounds like you might not be using the Hue motion sensor. And I actually have the Hue lights and a Hue motion sensor that I have set up in all of my homes, believe it or not. And it works really well. But I did set it up using all Hue branded stuff in the Hue app. It sounds like you're definitely not using the Hue app. You're scheduling it as part of an Amazon routine. And I don't know if you're tying that routine in with a different motion sensor to turn on the lights, which would add some instability. And this is actually one of the problems Matter is designed to solve. So we might see that going forward being better. We might not, because like I know the Hue bridge that they've got now is going to only be a bridge, not a controller for Matter. So basically, if you have a motion sensor on Amazon, which is going to be hopefully a Matter certified Amazon hub, and a Matter certified motion controller, it would actually speak to the hub, and then the hub would tell the Hue bridge, hey, turn on this light. So you've got 2 hops happening there and 2 potential points of failure. Whereas if you put it all in the Hue app, it's basically the bridge is going to control everything. And I've had rock solid reliability with that until my batteries go out in the motion sensor. So that's when it starts getting iffy.
They should fix that.
Using the solar panels, no.
So if he does not have a Hue motion sensor, which I presume the same because I don't have one and I can't even set up automations in my Hue app for my lights because I don't have the Hue motion sensor. I could do it through a hub like he's doing. I mean, it's not a terribly expensive cost to switch over to a Hue motion sensor.
It's $45 for a Hue motion sensor.
Yeah. I mean, it's an option.
But if you don't like that option, that's totally fine. Waiting for Matter might help. It might not, depending on if your sensor gets an upgrade, which it might not. If I'm not sure what's causing the unreliability, you mentioned a lot of things like it's whenever I unplug my Ethernet cable or I switch things out. I will say because the Hue bulbs and system is a Zigbee, and probably your motion sensor is Zigbee as well if you're using it with Amazon, because they only support Zigbee, and a Wi-Fi motion sensor is it'd be pretty power intensive. Sometimes it just takes some time for the Zigbee network to repopulate if something has changed. So it could be like, and I don't know without troubleshooting in your house, that, you know, it might take a few hours for everything to reestablish the mesh.
Right.
Basically.
Right.
So that's another option. So my recommendation to you is lame. It's like, hey, buy a Hue motion sensor and keep it all in the same ecosystem, or wait for Matter, hope it helps. I guess your other option would be to use a different light bulb and then do everything from like basically buy a Wi-Fi light bulb and eliminate that Hue hub, because you've got kind of 2 hub actions happening there with the Amazon acting as a hub and the Hue thing acting as a hub, which brings us to an interesting point. And I would love, instead of just having y'all call us, I would love to get your feedback. We're going to put a link in the post and we'll also put it on social channels. But we would love to know, because Kevin and I got into a debate. I was like, I always, if I have the choice, create my routines or schedules or things like motion, turning on a light, in the dedicated app itself, if I can.
The device app.
The device app. And I do that because I feel like it's more reliable.
And I do not, because I find great reliability in the HomeKit hub experience. So I do all my automations in the HomeKit app. So basically on the hub, not the device apps. To me, for one thing, like I said, it's been rock solid. And the other thing is the apps it just seems like I'm making all these touch points. Like if I have 15 different devices with automations, I've got 15 different touch points. So should it work? Sure, it should, but it doesn't always. So
yeah. So we want to know, what smart home hub platform you're using, because I think I find that my automations in Google can get a little laggy. My Amazon automations, they're fine, but they struggle when I move things on and off the network sometimes. So, and then my Smart Things automations, man, I'm still, let's just that. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious what hub you're using. And if you make your routines in the device app or in the hub app, I suspect, Kevin, that, more people use the hub, but, just. I'm
going to go a step further and say more people that are HomeKit users use the hub. That's going to be my guess.
Yeah. And then if you want, you can tell us why, but that's totally voluntary. The other two, not voluntary. I mean, It's all voluntary, but if you start, you want to answer the survey, you got to answer those 2 questions.
And this data is just for us. It's not like we're going to
share it with y'all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. We're not using this for anything secret or special. We're just curious because
it's an interesting question.
Yeah. I'm like, hub or device app? All right. And remember, if you want to call us and ask us your smart home question or generate more poll questions, give us a call at 512-623-7424, and you will be entered to win the Nanoleaf Mini Triangles kit, I believe. And that concludes this segment of the show, but please stay tuned for our guest, who is Ivo Rook of Once. We're going to be talking about cellular, connectivity, data. We talk about CoAP in this one. Yeah! So stay tuned for that. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and today's guest is Sanjay Gupta, who is president and chairman of the AirFuel Alliance. Hello, Sanjay. How are you today?
I am doing excellent. Great to be here, Stacey.
I am super happy to have you. We are coming out of CES, and y'all had a big announcement, which actually is one of my trends for this coming year. So I feel super smart. Thank you. And y'all are launching AirFuel RF, which is wireless charging at a distance. So can you tell me a little bit more about, we'll start with AirFuel RF and what you launched.
Perfect. So maybe, Stacey, if you don't mind, why don't I start with just a quick introduction to AirFuel Alliance itself, and then we talk about the standard. So AirFuel Alliance is a global standards organization. All of our members are committed to what I like to say, true wireless power. Give people the freedom that they desire from wireless power, right? The power cords are still the last cords left in our lives. All our members are committed to, let's get rid of them. So in that spirit, the AirFuel RF standard that we just announced at CES last week is really designed to be able to power devices that need small amounts of power at a distance. And we're talking distance, let's say, of a couple of meters. So now you can imagine, let's say, a room with one of the AirFuel RF transmitters, and it can power a whole bunch of IoT devices that you would find. It is actually a big deal, Stacey. You probably know better than me. We're selling tens of billions of IoT devices every year, right? This market is 5 to 10 times bigger than the number of smartphones that are being sold every year, right? So it's a massive, massive market. And, even though these IoT devices take small amounts of power, it is not zero. Most of these devices today have batteries in them that you have to go replace. First, find where these things are and then replace batteries. It's a painful process, right? What the AirFuel RF technology allows you to do is to deliver power to these devices wirelessly. What this enables at the end is to eliminate the batteries out of these IoT sensors. Well, now imagine these IoT sensors without you having to go replace batteries to just keep going on and on and on like the Energizer Bunny, right? As long as your electronics last, these IoT devices will keep providing and sending you data.
Yeah, never touching a sensor.
Exactly, right? We've talked about sensor dust and so on, but none of this is possible if you don't have this technology, because batteries by far are the biggest component, volume-wise in these devices of ours today. So it makes great financial sense to be able to do this, but I also, think about the impact to sustainability. Batteries have all of these toxic things that we all talk about in the industry today. And if you can start building these devices without batteries, just imagine how many batteries you're keeping out of the landfill eventually. I don't tell people do it for sustainability, do it for good if it makes good financial sense. And absolutely it does, but it has a huge impact on sustainability.
So for people who are like, I'm sorry, what are you talking about? Let's explain how this works, because it's offering just a few, is it sub 5 watts of power? Talk to me about how much power. I have to have a chip in each device. So let's explain how this works and how this might look in a home.
No, absolutely. So I think the comparison that is often made is wireless power is like Wi-Fi. So imagine a wireless power transmitter, which is analogous to your wireless power access point or your router at home, and it's broadcasting power. This power can then be received by the IoT devices or the receivers. They have a small chip in them, which is designed to receive and harvest this energy and convert it to something that can be reused, maybe stored in a capacitor or provided to the electronics directly or charge a small rechargeable coin cell maybe also. So now the question is, how much power can you deliver this way? And I think the question should really be, how much power can you deliver safely, right? This is really not necessarily a technical limitation. If you go to a lab, I'm sure we can show you, Stacy, tens of watts or maybe even higher amounts of watts of power being transferred from the transmitter and being received by devices. But when you look at the regulatory environment and what are the safety and regulatory requirements around the technology, what you can actually transfer is, depending on the frequency you use and so on, a few watts of power can be transferred. And that means is at a distance, now the power that you can receive will vary by distance, because the farther you are, the less power we receive. So you will receive, I would say, a few milliwatts of power. Now, clearly, a few milliwatts of power is sufficient to power most of our IoT devices today. They are having a sensing component and they have some wireless communications protocol, which is very, very low power. Now, clearly, that's what this technology is designed for. This technology is not designed, hey, charge your smartphone in your pocket. No, we know how to do this, except it's not going to be safe. So I would not recommend anybody try doing this, at least at a commercial level, right? So think about trickle charging or things that need small amounts of power. A very interesting application that you're probably going to hear a lot about are these e-ink smart labels, right, that you now see in retail stores. Now, the e-ink display technology is very interesting. You only need power to change what's on the display. To maintain what is there, it doesn't consume power. So you need very small amounts of power. If you want to change the pricing, you deliver it a small amount of power, it changes what's on the thing, and you can change it every few minutes in response to, let's say, a customer passing by.
Why is this happening today? I know that last year, I will tell you that my prediction was based on the FCC approving several over-the-air wireless power companies and approving their operation, but I don't know what else might be happening.
I would say a lot of stars have aligned in the last 12 months or so. The fundamentals of the technology to do wireless power transfer and even using RF waves, somewhere in the gigahertz, close to a 1 gigahertz and above range has always been there. We've known how the physics works. That has not been the issue. The issue, if you look at what has happened, is you mentioned the safety regulatory side. Whenever we have energy being transferred wirelessly, you always have to make sure it is being done safely, right? The amount of energy our cellular base stations can send, our phones can transfer when you're on a phone call, that is very highly regulated. The same regulations apply to wireless power. And now, as you said, we've seen a lot of products being approved in that space. The other thing that has happened is clearly to do it safely, you cannot send unlimited amounts of energy. We talked about you can transfer a few watts. When you receive it at a few meters, we're talking about a milliwatt or below. So the question always is, okay, so what devices are there that can actually benefit from a few milliwatts? And this is where I think there's been a lot of innovation in the last few years, which is the amount of energy for computing has gone down, right? So you can actually, even with a small, like less than a milliwatt, you can actually do a lot of computation. And more importantly, the low power communication technologies have improved. And our ability to make the level of integration for these communication and computing technologies has improved, that now you can have, let's say, an integrated BLE device, which integrates both computation and communication at very, very small, minuscule amounts of power. So I think it's both the wireless power technology improving and the communication and the computational industries improving, that their power consumption is coming down, where these two things are intersecting now. It wasn't just sufficient to deliver 10% of somebody's energy consumption, because who cares then? But now is when it has become feasible to say, you know what, wireless power can deliver all the power that you need for your use case. So don't need batteries anymore. Now that is really interesting.
Yeah, so that's where the companies like Atmosic, Wiliot, Everactive, all of those companies have been really pioneering super efficient radio and communication or radio and computing.
Exactly.
I hadn't thought about that. Okay. Along those lines, let's talk about the members of the Airfuel Alliance and the ecosystem that y'all are trying to develop. So I know some of those companies are members. You've got some wireless power delivery companies. Can you talk to me about what a wireless power ecosystem needs to have?
The who's who of the consumer electronics industry globally participates in AirFuel, right? And to bring to market any technology in the wireless space, not just wireless power, right? You of course need technology providers. That is essential. But you need the OEMs, folks who are actually going to be integrating these technology into their products. So we have those members, companies like Samsung and Huawei and Xiaomi and so on. Those guys are participating. We have the semiconductor companies participating. You can look and say Atmosic, Energous, ST Microelectronics. These are all members who actually make integrated circuits that actually are essential to miniaturizing all of this technology so that it's fit for integration. You don't want these wireless power systems to be bigger than the IoT device in itself in terms of shape and size and volume. That isn't very attractive. Good for a demo, but okay, not tremendously useful. Then we have folks who actually do system integration and manufacturing. And so it's really not just like one or two people. We need everybody working together towards the same goal with the same mission to make it happen.
Excellent. And I know when people think about wireless power, they think about Qi, which has been the standard for a long time. And just this year at CES, we saw Apple get involved in doing MagSafe with Qi, which is a big deal. So talk to us, when I think wireless power, how this works or replaces something like an inductive standard?
Yeah, so and maybe it's actually very important to go back to why AirFuel was actually created. All our members are fully committed to enabling, as I was saying, true wireless power. True wireless power, wireless is supposed to untether you, give you the freedom. And today's wireless power technology that most of us are familiar with, let's say on our phones, is anything but. Right? It doesn't really give you the spatial freedom now to maintain the level of performance, right? Which is still slower than what a wire can do, but you've lost your freedom. You're basically sticking something with a wire to the back of your phone. It is wireless, what I would say, maybe it's a little bit of the semantics. Yes, it is wireless. There's no piece of copper or metal going from the transmitter to the receiver, but the distance is maybe a couple of millimeters at best, right? Our members and a vision of wireless power transfer is a little bit different, which is we want to enable freedom so that I'm not tethered to a spot. Give me freedom to put my devices wherever I want to and charge them there. Charge multiple devices at the same time. With today's Qi standard, you cannot charge two phones from the same transmitter. How would you attach two of them to the same magnet? It just doesn't work. We want the ability to charge multiple devices simultaneously, and these devices may require different amounts of power. So it could be a laptop, a phone, a mouse, a keyboard, all powering simultaneously from one transmitter. Imagine, let's say, a desk that you have, and you have all of your electronics, and we all have a whole lot of them, all of them charging wirelessly from something underneath the desk that you can't even see, right? Same with the RF standard, which is, it's not for one transmitter for one IoT sensor. If you have 10 IoT sensors, let's power all 10 of them from one transmitter. That's what wireless is about. So that's really what our vision is. And AirFuel has two different flavors of technology to suit the different use cases. We've talked a lot about the AirFuel RF, which is delivering, sub 1 watt of power to our IoT devices. But we also have another mature technology called AirFuel Resonant, which delivers up to 50 watts of power, and we're working on something that can even up that number to over 100 watts of power being delivered to devices at a distance, right? So enabling desks, sometimes I like to call it maybe surface charging, so that you have a two-dimensional surface and you can charge any device that is on the surface or something that is, underneath, maybe your table, maybe your kitchen counter with glass or marble or granite or anything else, right? So very clean surface allows you all the spatial freedom. Hopefully that's enough of an overview on AirFuel and what we do and what's our vision of where the industry is going and where it's headed.
And along those lines, let's talk about timing. This obviously I said it was coming out this year. I know that there are partnerships in place to put wireless transmitters in retail settings already. So where are we in terms of I can go buy, I don't know if I'm going to buy like an access point for my home and it charges everything. I know we've got a chicken and egg, like you got to have the delivery mechanism and you have to have the receiving mechanisms in consumer electronics. So talk to me about how this is going to unfold.
Yeah, so, I think you brought up something very interesting, right? This chicken and egg problem in wireless, right? And the question is, do transmitters come first or the devices with the receivers come first? And this is where standards come in. The only way to kind of get out of this chicken and egg endless loop is to have industry standards that both people who are making transmitters and people integrating receivers into devices buy into and agree. And we can create a multi-vendor environment so that you are not locked into a proprietary technology. So the standards now exist. You've seen Atmosic and Energis announce in joint partnership a development kit this week as well. So what that means is if you are interested in integrating this technology in your product, the hurdle to trialing this technology and getting your feet wet is very low. All what you have to do is probably send an email to one of those two companies. You can get a little development kit and start understanding and seeing how this technology works for you, your use case, and start integrating it. I think we should be seeing those electronic shelf labels that I was talking about. These are e-ink displays in the retail store shelves in the next 12 months or so, because the technology is ready. You could be at CES and see the technology in action. And it's a use case that is very meaningful to end customers. If I own a brick and mortar retail store, I can, today my paper pricing displays and promotional displays can only be changed maybe once every week. Imagine if you can change this dynamically every few minutes. Now that is how you compete with online. That's my prediction in a way.
All right. I shall look for physical tags in my stores to become more dynamic. All right. Well, Sanjay, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you. Great talking to you, Stacey.
And that concludes this week's episode of the Internet of Things podcast. Please join us next Thursday and don't forget to subscribe. And if you can't get enough IoT news, I would love for you to sign up at www.stacyoniot.com for our weekly IoT newsletter, where we explain all kinds of things that we don't even get to on the show. Once again, thank you for listening and please subscribe.